Hi, I'm Cindy O'Lear. I teach ABBA art here at New Covenant United Methodist Church when there isn't a pandemic going on. Hopefully we'll be back to that again soon. Been doing that for 3 years, and the reason I came to the church to do that is because anywhere around the churches or around the villages or around the country, it is not okay to put up religious symbols of any kind or paintings. It's sort of gone out of style, I guess. We're as Christians, we're gently being pushed away, and so I decided that I needed to take a stand. And I had something terrible happen to me in the midst of teaching in the pandemic, just before the pandemic. Maybe it wasn't terrible. Maybe it turned out to be another blessing. I was teaching a class, and I'm a kind of a high-power person. I like to do lots of things. And I was sort of running down in energy. Now, I just turned 75 last week, so I'm no spring chicken. But I decided that I probably wasn't feeling quite right. I wasn't feeling, and I didn't want to blame it on aging, so I called my primary doctor, and I said, Dr. Jordan, I don't feel quite right, need to come in. And I did, and I love my doctors. I really love a lot of doctors now. And he ran me through a whole bunch of tests. One thing led to another. I'll skip forward on this. And pretty soon I was whisked away to a surgery. And at that time I found out I had to have a quadruple bypass. You don't get much time to think about things. I thought I was just going to have a few little stints, like everybody else gets. Didn't turn out that way, and it didn't really surprise me that much because I have a history of my parents, my grandparents all had heart problems, so here I am. I've inherited that part of the body. But I had the surgery with a very fine surgeon, Dr. Richardson, and he did the surgery for me, and I was coming through it just fine. And then what happened is I had to think about what I was doing. Now I'm going to jump forward just a little bit so I can tie this into my story. My husband died of cancer just about 5 years ago. And I've had 2 husbands die of cancer. And when he was dying, and he made the decision, he was a good Christian. He was telling jokes an hour before he passed away. And he asked me, are you going to be okay? And I said, yeah, I will. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I'll throw myself into art. So I brought one of my paintings with me, and I did this painting after I had my surgeries. And after 5.5 months, I spent 5.5 months in 3 hospitals. This is nonstop. 2 of them twice, and I really had every exam you could possibly have, and I've had 3 doctors tell me that there are very many people who were as bad as I was, who just don't live through it. They just don't make it. And I did. And there's no question in my mind why I'm here today talking to you. I'm a miracle. I am an absolute miracle. You're looking at one. I died twice during that time. And I remember what happened during that time. I'll get to that part later. So when my husband was passing away, there was a lovely nurse, and I was with him the whole time. I was up here up at the village's hospital after I'd taken to him every other place, and he knew it was the end, and I knew it was the end. And they were doing whatever tests they had to do, and he was deciding to go into hospice. We decided together. And while we were there, a nurse came in, and I'd take my little iPad in and run the music for him to calm him because he was medicated and in pain. And the nurse came in, and I was with him almost nonstop. And she said, I wish everyone would treat their loved ones the way that you treat yours. And I said, well, you know, he took care of me. It's my turn to take care of him. But I learned a lot in that. He wasn't afraid when he passed, not at all. And it was because of what was in his heart and because of his faith, which he didn't always have. I had to drag him off to church to start with. I used to pray. Not that he wasn't a man of faith, he just was afraid of church and had had some bad experiences, as many people have. But he found New Covenant, and then he would drag me off to church. Anyway, 5.5 months of medical care started in October of 2019 and finished at the end of March. I was in the hospital exactly the same time that Pastor Harold was in. He almost died and I almost died. We both had been in the hospital together. Well, he wasn't actually in the hospital. We'd been in a clinic over in Jerusalem together because we both got injured at the same time. And a friend of mine said, what are you two, keeping track of each other and trying to outdo each other? No, we're not. I look at Pastor Harold now. I pray for him daily because I know he isn't all together yet. I know I'm not all together yet. He's got a better chance of it than I do. I'm a little older than he is. Anyway, a lot older. I had tests, surgery, intensive care, assisted living, emergency rooms, and I had a trach 3 times. In fact, I was just mentioning, I wear this scarf. My lovely sister Elaine sent me from Michigan, and the reason she did is because she was recovering from a surgery there. Not as intensive as what I went through, but still she was recovering. So she and Amazon were friends, and she kept sending me things. And this was to cover up the hole that the trach made in my throat. And most people only have a trach once. I had mine twice. Okay. I want to talk about my experience in the hospitals and with this church and with my family. It brings me to tears of joy. These are not sadness, these are tears of joy. My son and my daughter, those 2 rascals that I raised, who are grown-up adults now. One lives in Michigan, the other lives in Texas. Once they found out that I was in need, they dropped everything. How blessed am I? Every 3 weeks, one of them would fly in. They would have a one-day turnover where they saw each other, and the other one, well, one would fly out and the other one would fly in. And they did that for 5.5 months. Yeah, that's expensive, but my son is a wonderful young man. He's retired from the United States military. He was a West Point grad. I'm proud of him for that. And he has friends from back then who knew of his problem. Glenn's a great Christian. They came forward, and one of his friends gave him all his frequent flyer miles. So all that was paid for. How wonderful is God? How blessed am I? How blessed are my children? That's how God works. You know, I want to tell this story to people so they understand they just have to have faith. You who are watching this, just have faith. Faith is the hardest thing to learn. I mean, we learn a lot of things. We learn how to ride a bicycle. We learn how to love. We learn how to eat. We learn learning and letting go to faith. I think it's got to be one of the hardest things that there is to do. And it takes a lifetime, and it keeps trying to slip away, but you can't let it slip away, because the closer you are to that faith, the better life becomes for you. When I was in the hospital all that time, I had this entire church praying for me. You know, the quilt I received from the Quilting Guild, it made me cry when I got it. I wasn't expecting it. And it's so beautiful, it's unbelievable. As an artist, they honored me with a special quilt that they made. And I am so grateful to those people. I'm grateful to the people that took care of me in the hospital. There were two whole floors that I went in between in the cardiac area, and I did have some bad care along the way, and that's how I ended up with the second trach. I actually was doing much better after the surgery and feeling good, and I came into assisted care, and my kids weren't here, and I had a friend who was in my ABBA art class, who was so kind, and she did a lot of things for me while I was in that assisted care and helped me get me home, and my sister was there, and I walked in the door and I fell over because the assisted care living had sent me home with pneumonia, and I died. Lucky for me, there were nurses there, and my sister tells me that I don't recall a lot of this, you see, that she saw them pounding on my chest to bring me back, and back to the hospital I went. I can't say enough about how wonderful they are at Leesburg Hospital. In fact, I just read that they just won an award for their pulmonary and their heart units in the state of Florida, that they're one of the best. And so I certainly can attest to it. I am the result of the hard work and the blessings that I received through their care. In the midst of all this, the pandemic hit, of course, and one of my times that I had to come back to medical care again was interrupted because I was back off at another hospital. It was called the Summit, which is right down the road here, and they were wonderful also. People there were, but the people that were coming in from the prison were housed right next to me. I had a room, and right next door were all the COVID patients that were coming in. And believe me, I wasn't afraid. I really wasn't. But I didn't want to stay in there any longer than I had to. I came out of there and came home. And when I got home, now this is 5.5 months later, I still wasn't okay. I was on 7 machines. My bedroom turned into a hospital room. And a dear friend of mine, I didn't ask her, this is how God works, folks. She said, I'm coming to take care of you. Your kids can go home. And that's my friend Connie. She came in for a week and stayed 6 weeks. My house is totally organized. She did it all. She cooked, she cleaned, she did everything for me. Reorganized my bedroom. It still looks like a hospital room, which I'm not too happy about, but it's still necessary. Gradually, the machines were tapered off, all the different machines, and I'm only using one now, and that's to sleep at night. And it's a blessing that I have it because it's a new machine that hasn't been around that long, and I found out yesterday from my pulmonologist that my diaphragm is never going to work right, and so I'm going to be on this machine the rest of my life. Lucky for me, I only have to use it when I'm sleeping, or when I'm sleeping, taking a nap or sleeping, and it's a blessing. Again, a blessing. I'm comfortable with it. People say to me, I don't know how you could stand it. I said, it's like a security blanket to me. I put it on and I'm asleep in 5 minutes. It's just another blessing. Everybody looks at all the different things that happen in their lives and think that they're terrible things. I don't. I see every little thing as God's plan for me. And if I fight it, I'm just hurting myself. When I don't fight it, I can't believe all the wonderful things that come my way, things I don't even ask for. And really, that's what I'm talking about here. By being a miracle, I recall when I was having that surgery, when I first had it, I was groggy, lifting my head up a little bit, and I shouldn't have been. And I said to the surgeon, This is Dr. Richardson. Doctor, I only need 25 more years. I have more things to do. And crash, I went out. God must have been listening. Dr. Richardson did a fine job. And all the doctors thereafter did a job, great job. Dr. Negran, my pulmonologist, my cardiologist, I went to see him recently, and I was telling him about all the things I want to do with my life. I want to do things, continue to do things with young people. I was a mentor in the mentoring program here, and at the very end was when my mentee was either going to graduate or not, and I wasn't there for him, and I phoned from the hospital. I phoned Ann Hill, who is fabulous here in this church. A lot of you don't know who she is. She has organized this mentoring program. She took over and really did everything my mentee needed to have happen at the very end so that he could graduate. That young man is blessed because everybody around here and everybody that I run into, everybody that I want around me are believers. And this is an ugly world. That's what this painting is about. That's what this fire is about. That's what's going on today in our life. And I name this, I put a name on this. It's called There's Smoke in the Mountain. And it has to do with God, God's Spirit coming through. And I just firmly, totally, with my whole being, believe that. It's taken me a long time. Young people are going to look at this and say, yeah, right. But I'm telling you, when I died, it was wonderful. My pastor and his wife, Donna, they came to see me. I was out of it a lot of the time. I didn't remember that they came to see me. There was a lot that happened during that time that I don't remember. My friend Wanda was there. I just found that out today, because I was out of it. There was a time period where I couldn't write, I couldn't talk, I couldn't think. I tried to write. It was scribbles. It was really frustrating to me. My mind was starting to come back, but it was a real, honest-to-goodness struggle. Sometime in the midst of all that, when I died, and I did die twice, as I said, I remember what happened, and I'm going to describe it to you. And by the way, that cardiologist told me that he challenged me to paint what happened. And this is what I'm going to paint. I haven't painted it yet. I'm working on another commission right now. But before I do a painting, I think an awful lot about it. And immediately after it happened, I sat down and I sketched what was happening so that I wouldn't forget it. And I have a sketch. As I passed, I wasn't thinking that I was dying. I was thinking, oh my word, this is a wonderful feeling. I just can't believe how wonderful this is. Look at all that. I see a zillion different things here. And if you ever felt all of the wonderful joy in your life all bundled into one spot, if you felt all of that and then multiply it times 1,000, that's what it's like when you're dying. I suppose if you're good, the Bible says, if you're not good, that's not going to happen. I believe that. I don't know. I've gone the other way. I want to go the other way. But I'm telling you, it was an absolute wonderful place. And I was thinking, I should really let go into this. That's what was going on in my mind. I can't tell you how long this lasted. It could have been 3 seconds or it could have been 3 weeks because I was in and out at that time. But at this time, my brain was always still working. And my brain was telling me things about my family. I knew how sad they were. I knew what was going on, and I knew I had another job to do. I just knew that. And so I found myself pulling myself out of that comfort area that someday I'm going to go to, and I'm going to meet those two husbands. And the joke that the last husband who gave to me an hour before he passed was, so when you die, who are you going to be with, him or me? I laughed right out loud. How many people do you hear that tell jokes on their deathbed? And I laughed, and God put the right words in my mouth, and I said, well, you're going to like him, and he's going to like you, and you're going to go off and do stupid boy things together and leave me in the dust someplace. And that's okay. But I mean, you know, who knows what it's like? I think I went into that quantum space that they're saying it's got to be out there, but they can't define it. I think that's a way to define it. But I will paint it. And I brought this painting because this is my heart too. This is what I felt from my heart. And I try to paint things that are from my heart. We're blessed. We have to accept the blessings that God gives us. Okay, I made a list here of I feel like I'm at the Academy Awards here, thanking all the people. You know, they always say, well, I want to thank. Okay, here's what I want to thank. I want to thank Pastor Harold and Donna for everything they do in this church and for the church, and all of the staff that is here. I didn't know that we have 42 people on staff until I asked. That's a lot of people. And I'm grateful to every one of them. All the medical staff that took care of me from the hospitals, Dr. Richardson, Dr. Ortiz, Dr. Negran, and primarily my primary Dr. Jordan, and their staff, and all of the people that worked under them, and everybody in the hospital, and the hospital administrator, you know, all those people, my dental people now, I thank them for being in the medical profession. And my hygienist just said to me, nobody thanks us for what we do. I am so grateful for medical people. I mean, they're the reason I'm here. And I'm grateful for every single one of them. God bless every one of them. I talked about my children. I can't say enough about them. My sisters, my sister Laurie, who lives in Mount Doris, she was always there taking notes, recording, making sure I got the right things, talking to my kids continually, taking them out to eat, and doing all kinds of things for them. My sister Elaine, who was, as I said, was going through surgeries, she sent me this beautiful scarf, because as soon as I said, I have a terrible hole in my throat, she said, what's your best colors? And in the mail came a bunch of scarves to pick from. I mean, I've got the most beautiful masks to use because of Elaine. In fact, today she said, I just bought you another mask. It's got an artist thing on it. I can't wait to get it. Anyway, thank you, Elaine and Laurie. My dear friend Connie, I talked about her. She is so special. How many people have a friend that would drop everything and take care of them for 6 weeks? I mean, she totally took care of me. She got up in the middle of the night, and she heard my beepers going off. She was there in a flash to find out if I was okay. I'm blessed. And my whole church family. The prayers, the gifts that I got, the cards. I can't read because I got tears in my eyes. My prayer quilt, I talked about that. My neighbors, they fed me. They picked up my mail. They took care of my kids. They took them out. You know, my one neighbor watered all my plants. I mean, that's a big deal. I don't have to worry about it. He's still watering them. My son said, I think he likes to water them. I'm not going to interrupt it. By the way, the ones outdoors he does. It's so nice. Anyway, God heard my prayer. And I am a miracle. I, Cindy O'Lear, sitting here, am in the full flesh. I am a miracle. God saved me for something else. And I intend with the rest of my life to help people to find that peace, that comfort. I was never afraid. I was never afraid. I could walk through fire. And you know, I used to think, what about Jesus? You know, what did Jesus do? Would I do all the things he would do and stand up for my faith? And he was perfect with his. I'm real imperfect with mine. Would I do it? I think now I would, but you know, I'm an old lady. But not in my mind, I'm not. I tell my doctors, my brain's 25, my body not so much. And that's all I have to say.